Hey nerdlings, you're watching Captain Algebra.
This is Tom and Lacey of Do You Nerd, signing off.
Hey everybody, Captain Algebra here, and I'm here with a video to talk about my backlog, how big the backlog is, and how I deal with it. So I was originally tagged by Gib84 Gaming a few months ago at this point, and about a month ago I finally realized that I was looking through stuff on YouTube and I realized that I had been tagged in something, and I felt terrible because I didn't see the video. But I loved the idea, because as gamers, as collectors, backlog is something that we all deal with, right? Trying to get through all the games we own while we also buy a lot of games. I mean, if you're like me, you buy a lot of games throughout the year, more than you can play, and the backlog just grows larger and larger and larger. And so I decided I'd come here and talk about how I deal with my backlog. So first things first, about the size of the backlog. So I believe in my collection I have roughly 2,600 games, and I've beaten close to 700 of them. And so that gives me about 1,900 games in my collection that I haven't beaten. So honestly, that's what my backlog is. It's every game that I haven't beaten. Now, obviously, there's not going to be every game on my backlog that I'm going to beat, right? I've got a ton of sports games. I love sports. I mean, hell, I'm sporting my Warren Moon jersey right now. But I don't want to play them all. You know, I don't want to play every single Madden game. Because for me, that means playing through an entire season, winning the Super Bowl and stuff. And I'm not one to like sim games, which for football, it's not bad. 16-game season, then the playoffs, that's not bad. But like you play a basketball game, that's an 82-game season plus the playoffs. In baseball, it's 62, 64-game season plus the playoffs. That takes a long time. And I don't really want to spend my time playing through those. Then you got puzzle games. A lot of them don't really have an end. Plus, I don't love puzzle games. So yeah, there are some I realistically will never get to, and that's okay, but I still include it in my backlog. So like I said, roughly about 1,900 games in my backlog. So what do I do to do it? How do I get through my backlog? Like, what's my plan of attack? And so part of that is I just try to play as many games as I can. That's one of the reasons I don't do a lot of YouTube. You know, I don't make a lot of edited videos, is because my time's pretty limited. You know, I got a full-time job, and plus I got 2 kids, 4 and 5 years old, plus I got my wife. Like, I want to spend time with them. And so when I have free time, it's a big choice. Like, do I want to play a video game or do I want to make a video? And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to choose to play a video game because it's just more fun to me. You know, I don't enjoy the editing aspect of YouTube. And so I play a lot of games. In fact, over the past 3 years, I've beaten over 100 games every single year. I started keeping track of this, I want to say 5 years ago. I noticed that Church the Game Grinder was posting videos every year about the games he beat. And I'm like, this is a good idea. So the first year I did, I only beat like 40 some games. The next year I think I doubled it and beat 80 some. And then I made it a goal to actually hit 100. And so I hit 150 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I went to 125. Last year, I beat 107. So it's been going down, but I still make it a goal to try and beat 100 games a year. Because I buy a ton of games. If you guys follow my Genesis collecting, going for the complete collection, like I buy a lot of those. I still buy a lot of PS4 games because they're really cheap and easy to find. And so, even though I beat 100 games a year, I still probably buy more games in a year than I actually beat. And so it's growing a lot, but at least that helps go towards my backlog. You know, if I was only beating 10 games a year, 20 games a year, then yeah, the backlog would grow a ridiculous amount. And so that's part of it. I just play a lot of games. And to help with that, I've basically got 4 ways I deal with my backlog. The first one is probably the saddest, and that is I don't really replay games anymore. Sure, I'll still play some of my favorites from childhood. You know, I'll play Mario 3, I'll play Super C and Contra, I'll play Streets of Rage 2, Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, some of my absolute favorites from my childhood, but none of those games take me that long. You know, I can get through them so quickly. But there have been some amazing games that I've played over the last few years, especially when it comes to modern gaming, that I just don't know if I'll ever touch again because I want to keep going through my backlog. And so I figured I would share a few of those. First one, Last of Us Part 2. I absolutely love this game, but I don't know if I'll ever touch it again. Control, an absolute banger of a game. I don't know if I'll touch it again. Days Gone. I love this game. It's so good. And then Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Huge Star Wars fan. And still, I don't know if I'll play this again. Now, Jedi Survivor just came out. I'm playing that right now. And it kind of gets me in the mood to go back and play that. But I don't know if I will. These modern games take hours upon hours upon hours. And I just don't necessarily want to go back and do that if that's going to prevent me from playing new games. And that's one of the big things is I always try to play, different games, which is why I don't really replay a lot of them. And so that kind of leads me to my next way I deal with my backlog is I don't play a lot of long games. I try to play as many short games as I possibly can. And so a lot of times, like at the end of the year, if I'm not close to my 100-game goal, or if I want to try and beat as many games as I can, is I'll play like a lot of Game Boy games because they're typically pretty short, or NES games because they're typically pretty short. So a couple games here I just want to talk about real quick that I've played over the last couple years that are easy and quick. I got WWF King of the Ring. That took like 20 minutes to beat. WWF Raw, another like 20-minute game. This year, I decided to play Anticipation. I also played Wheel of Fortune. Again, probably 30 minutes each, tops. Recently, I played Mickey Mouse, The Great Circus Mystery. That one was a little bit over an hour, but still, not a very long game. Foxyland from the Foxyland collection. That was a half hour, I think. And then Barkley Shut Up and Jam, which I believe it took me about an hour to play through the entire tournament mode. I think I had to do like 2 attempts at it. So yeah, like sometimes I just go for short games. One thing that helps is I'm not into RPGs, like JRPGs. So I'm not going to play a Final Fantasy or something like that takes hours upon hours. They aren't interesting to me. Plus, they're a huge time sink, and I just don't want to deal with that. So the last 2 ways I deal with my backlog are probably the most fun. First one I want to talk about is the Super Enabler Brothers podcast. My buddies, Chris, the old ass retro gamer, and Jason from Corpse Club Gaming, they started a podcast a couple years ago at this point called the Super Enabler Bros. And one of the coolest things that they do on that is they made a list of games from including 0 and 00 and then all the way to 35, which match the numbers on a roulette wheel. And so you pick games on your backlog, put it on there, and then every time they do a podcast, at the end, they spin the wheel, and then whatever number comes up, they look at their backlog roulette sheet, and that's the game they play. And so I was one of the first guests ever to be on the podcast, and so I made a list for it, and it was a lot of fun. I'm like, hey, sometimes I don't know what I want to play next. It's hard to decide, and so it's so easy to just spin the wheel. You can go online and do your own roulette wheel and just, hey, this is the game I'm going to play. Let's go play it. And I've done pretty well with it ever since I started with that. I think there's only been 2 months that I have not beaten the game or even started it. So a couple months ago, Rastan came up on the Sega Master System, and I played a little bit. I just wasn't enjoying it, so I didn't finish it. Then Contra Shattered Soldier came on. I was planning to stream it, but it came up right at the beginning of October, which I usually stream October Spooktacular. And so I was like, I'll put it off until November. Well, then I got a new job and I just didn't have the time to stream anymore. So I completely put it off. And so once I get back to streaming, I'll do Shattered Soldier. But those are only 2 games I haven't done for my backlog roulette. But it's led me to play some really good games that I've wanted to play for years. So a couple real quick. Star Wars Battlefront. I've had that since I was a kid. Never played it. Speaking of Contra, Neo Contra. That game was fantastic. And then most recently, Dead Space. I've started that a couple times. I never finished it. But with Backlog Roulette, it forced me, not really forced me, but it gave me that urge, that motivation to actually go through it and finish it. Now, they don't have like a super regular schedule. They're both busy guys with jobs and families and stuff. And so you don't always have a regular schedule for doing the podcast. So there are some times where in between episodes, I'll just go online, spin my own roulette wheel, and pick a game off the list when I don't know what I want to play. So it's a really good way to attack the backlog. And then the 4th way I deal with my backlog is the Cartridge Club. So this is basically a game of the month, but for gamers, and so a lot of people have like book clubs where they do a book of the month, but this is for video games, and it's awesome. And so for years I knew about them, but I didn't know like if you had to be invited or whatever. Comes to find out, no, you just, follow them on Twitter and stuff and see what game they're playing, join in, comment, and you're in the club. It's pretty cool. It's a very fun group of people. They're very welcoming, which is awesome. And so this all started a few years ago. A guy asked me to be on the God of War 2018 podcast because I love the God of War series. And of course I did it and had a great time. And then I think the month after that, there was a game on my backlog I'd wanted to play. I'm like, hey, Cartridge Club is playing it. I'm going to play it. And that was Banjo-Kazooie on the N64. And I had a ton of fun playing it that month, talking to people on Twitter about it who were also playing the game. I ended up joining the Discord. And it was just cool to play a game on my backlog. And again, it gave me extra motivation to go through it. And so I started trying to play it as often as I could. If there was a game that was their game of the month that I hadn't played, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play through it. And so some of the games that I've played since then, we got Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap. Every March they do March Madness, where it's a bunch of games at once. And so I think last year was Castlevania games, and so I beat Circle of the Moon. I also beat the other two GBA games. I don't have them physically, I just have them on the Castlevania collection. Back in October, I was streaming the Walking Dead Telltale series. Didn't play that until then. They did Ratchet & Clank, so I played through the remake, a game I wanted to play through for years. Revenge of Shinobi. Had never played the Shinobi series, really. Horizon Zero Dawn. A game I had tried and never got into, but then with the Cartridge Club, it gave me that extra motivation. I played through it, now I absolutely love this game. And then Ghostbusters, another game that's really fun that I never really gave a chance to, but it was on my backlog, but because of the Cartridge Club, it gave me a reason to play it. Now, there's been a lot of months, too, where they've played a game that I've already played. There was Donkey Kong Country 2 on the Super Nintendo that I was on the podcast for, so I replayed through that. This last March was Mario on the NES, so the original 3 Mario games, so I played through all those. But none of those games take that long, because I've been playing them since I was a kid. But it's just a really cool way to attack the backlog. So those are basically the 4 ways that I deal with my backlog. Don't really replay games anymore. I try to play a lot of short games as much as possible. I use my backlog roulette from the Super Enabler Brothers, and then I got the Cartridge Club. And it's not perfect, right? My backlog still continues to grow, but that's my fault because I continue to buy more games. But at least I know I'm putting effort in it. I'm trying, and I feel like I do a pretty good job overall. But I just thought this was a really cool idea, just to hear how we all deal with our backlogs, because we all have them as gamers, and it's a problem for all of us. A good problem to have, right? More games to play. But it's still, we want to get through them as much as we can, because we have all these games. Our goal is to play them, right? Or at least I hope so. Hope we're not just collecting the games just to let them sit on a shelf. Hope we're here to play them. And so when Gib84 tagged me, I was like, I gotta get on this. So I'm not going to tag anyone specifically. This is just kind of an open tag. Like I said, this was going around a couple months ago, and I completely missed it. So if you want to make a video, if you want to put in the comments below what you do to deal with your backlog, I'd love to hear it, because it's just kind of cool to see how we deal with it. But I encourage you guys, if you are not currently subscribed, go to Corpse Sled Gaming on YouTube. Subscribe there, watch the Super Enabler podcast. Again, it's always at the end. Make your list, any 37 games that you want to be on your backlog, make a list, and then watch them spin the wheel, and then play it. And obviously, you don't have to finish the game, right? There's been plenty of times where Chris, the old ass retro gamer, hasn't enjoyed his game, so he stopped. But at least it got him trying a game that he hadn't tried before. And then again, Cartridge Club, I can't speak highly enough. It's a great way to be part of a community, and I think that really helps motivate people to play games, because not only are you playing it with other people, but you're talking about it. There's a Discord, there's social media that people talk about the games, and it's a really cool community. So that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this helps some of you find ways to get through your backlog. And again, I want to hear anything you guys do, because I still need more ideas. So thanks for watching, everybody. Till next time, this is Captain Algebra, signing off.